Hello, and welcome to this presentation entitled Introduction to FAA Part 107 Regulations. I am your professor, Dr. J. For individuals who know little to nothing about drones, they may imagine that, for a public safety agency to use a drone, they need simply purchase one, designate one of their employees as the drone pilot, ensure that he or she has a little training, and then fly the drone whenever and wherever they please. There is more to it than this. Despite the drone's small size, it is still an aircraft that is designed to fly in airspace. All airspace in the United States is regulated by the Federal Aviation Administration, or FAA. Therefore, the majority of drones and drone operations are subject to the FAA's rules and regulations. In June 2016, the FAA finalized the first operational rules for routine commercial use of small unmanned aircraft systems, or drones, thus opening pathways towards fully integrating drones into the nation's airspace. The FAA's rules are designed to promote airspace safety and apply to drones weighing less than 55 pounds that are conducting non-hobby operations. These rules are codified into the Code of Federal Regulations and are listed under Part 107 of Aircraft Safety Rules. Therefore, you frequently hear drone pilots simply refer to these rules collectively as Part 107. Part 107 rules do not apply to individuals who fly remote-controlled aircraft instead of drones. This exemption begs the question, what is the difference between a remote-controlled aircraft and a drone? There are several differences. First, there is a difference in how each aircraft is constructed. Generally, most remote control planes are quite insubstantial structures. While some do have features such as built-in cameras or a hardier construction, most remote control planes are quite flimsy. For this reason, you are unlikely to see any emergency services agency using a remote control plane, but you could see them using a drone. Second, remote control planes are usually only used for recreational purposes. Conversely, since drones are usually more solidly built machines that utilize more sophisticated technology, they have more applications for their use than simply recreational flying. The combination of robust construction and sophisticated technology is often reflected in the drone's price tag, as even smaller, more basic drones will be more expensive than your typical remote control airplane. Third, a remote control airplane needs someone to control it, as the name alludes to. Conversely, many drones can fly autonomously without the need for external control. Software programs such as Drone Deploy and Litchi can take control of a drone and guide it in flight without input from the remote pilot. Finally, most enthusiasts will tell you that the real difference between a drone and a remote-controlled aircraft is that drones offer flying with fewer limitations than remote-controlled aircraft. Therefore, if a pilot wants to do more than simply enjoy watching your aircraft fly in the sky, a drone offers superior potential. The enhanced capabilities of the drone and its ability to do more than remote control aircraft require that its use be strictly regulated by the FAA. Unless the drone is used entirely for recreational purposes, such as flying one around your backyard, these regulations generally do not apply. It is important to understand what recreational flying means. It is flying just for the fun of it. If you do anything more with the drone, it is probably not recreational flying. For example, many drones are purchased with cameras installed. Many pilots want to take photos or videos of their flights and upload them onto YouTube. Since YouTube allows for commercials to be embedded in YouTube videos, the FAA considers these actions to be commercial, not recreational flights. This means the FAA rules apply. One of the first rules to consider is the registration of a drone. Any drone that weighs between 0.55 pounds and 55 pounds and is used for anything other than recreational flying must be registered with the FAA. The registration may be done online and cost $5 per aircraft as of the time of this video. Pilots must be older than 13 years and a U.S. citizen or legal permanent resident of the United States to register a drone. Once the drone is registered, the registration number must be displayed on the aircraft. Remote pilots must be certified through the FAA. They are required to take an exam to receive this certification. To take this exam and receive the certification, the applicant must be at least 16 years of age, read, write, and speak English, and pass a background check. The exam is administered at a local flight center that has contracted with the FAA. When I obtained my remote pilot's license, I took my exam at a testing center at the Asheville airport. Once you pass the exam, you are issued a certificate that is good for 3 years. You may renew the certificate by retaking the exam. In addition to the FAA pilot requirements, states may have additional requirements. For example, in North Carolina, the Department of Transportation requires remote pilots, even with their FAA certification, who wish to fly for commercial or government purposes to take the NCDOT exam and obtain their state permit for such flying. Insurance is another consideration for drone operations. Although it is not currently required that remote pilots have insurance for their drones, this does not relieve the pilot of liability if someone is injured or someone else's property is damaged because of a flight mishap. If a remote pilot is flying for a governmental agency or a private company, the pilot should check with the agency or company to ascertain if they have or should get insurance to cover drone flights. If the pilot is flying as an individual, there are insurance companies that can provide insurance to cover the drone. In addition to aircraft registration and pilot certification, there are other rules that a remote pilot must follow. First, manned aircraft always have the right-of-way over unmanned aircraft. Therefore, a drone should not be operated within 5 miles of an airport unless the remote pilot has obtained permission from the airport. Second, the FAA restricts drone flights to an altitude no higher than 400 feet above ground level. An exception to this is if you must fly above a building or obstacle. The FAA will allow you to fly up to 400 feet above that building or obstacle. The purpose of the 400-foot ceiling is that the FAA restricts manned aircraft from flying below 500 feet except when landing or otherwise with permission. These restrictions allow for a 100-foot buffer between the unmanned and manned aircraft. Third, all flights must occur during daylight or twilight hours. A remote pilot may apply for a waiver from the FAA to fly at night. Quite frankly, the waiver process is tedious and not something that is granted quickly. If a remote pilot receives a waiver for nighttime flying, the drone must be marked with anti-collision lights. Fourth is the concern that has arisen with drone flights for privacy. Because of this concern, the FAA and many states have regulations that prohibit remote pilots from flying directly over people. Currently, this rule is interpreted literally, meaning that flights that are not directly over people, even though they may be close to people, are not prohibited. Further, there can be public safety exemptions such as for crowd and traffic control. Remote pilots should check their state laws regarding these rules and exemptions. This rule does not apply when the affected people are under a covered structure, such as a picnic pavilion or within a vehicle. Still another regulation is that drone pilots must keep their aircraft in sight at all times. This means the aircraft must be flown by line of sight. In open areas, this is not a problem. However, where I live in the mountains where there are also a lot of trees, this can be problematic. One way that remote pilots can comply with this rule when there are obstacles is to have ground observers positioned along the flight path who can communicate with the remote pilot via cell phone or radio. I hope it goes without saying that remote pilots should never operate their aircraft when under the influence of alcohol or drugs. Not only is this an FAA rule, it is good common sense. Drugs do not just mean illicit drugs. For example, if you are taking medication for a cold and the medicine makes you drowsy, you should not operate the aircraft. This concludes the presentation on the overview of the Part 107 requirements. This presentation was designed to simply be an overview of these requirements. If you intend to take the FAA exam for the remote pilot certification, you will need more in-depth resources to help you study for this exam. A student study guide can be found online. Further, there are many YouTube videos to help you prepare for the exam. Thanks for watching.